Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a women's physique IFBB Pro. Today's guest is Kimberly Rieck. Kimberly, I want to welcome you to Behind the Muscle podcast.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm pretty excited about this, especially since there's a lot of misconceptions about us bodybuilders. So it's kind of cool to show us what they're all about.
For sure, Kimberly. And that's kind of like the impetus behind me starting this podcast. I've got another podcast I've been doing for 3 years now, but I'm a huge bodybuilding fan, and I actually compete myself. And I really just want to bring to light the stories behind the muscle, because there are a lot of misconceptions. I think there's a lot of judging the book by its cover when it comes to people that are, muscular and actually compete in bodybuilding and fitness categories. So I'm excited that you're actually my first guest, and we're just going to jump right into things. The first question, Kimberly, just to kind of kick things off, is who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders or fitness athletes of all time? And then also, who are some of your favorite bodybuilders or fitness athletes currently?
So of all time, there would be obviously like the pioneers, I want to say, Corey Everson, Rachel McLish. I still want to say Juliana. She was like that physique that I always loved, and kind of what kept me pushing in women's physique. And then some of the greats before that, like Tom Platz and those legs. Currently, I mean, there's just so many that I really appreciate for kind of keeping women's physique where it should be. Like our Olympian Sarah, she's got, I think, where women's physique should be and has been going, with women's bodybuilding coming back up and being popular again once they tried to kind of shut it down for a bit. I think women's physique was really blurred with bodybuilding. Like, there were so many competitors trying to do both. But I'm happy to see like it coming back to where it should be and staying where it should be. And like, I was really happy seeing Sarah win this last year.
For sure. Now we're going to kind of get into your contest history and kind of those details a little bit later in our conversation, Kimberly. But when you actually first started competing, did you start competing in the women's physique division, or was it in another division?
My very first show, I actually did both physique and figure. It was a 2-day show, so I was able to do both and peak very well for both of them. And I ended up winning the overalls for both physique and figure, but I liked physique better. Like, my time on stage felt way more deserved than just being on stage for figure in those heels for a few minutes, and you work so hard to get there, and it just didn't feel like you presented as much as you could in that short time.
For sure. And then just touching on before we transition here, like kind of like growing up and everything, was it kind of like the male physiques, the male bodybuilders that really first influenced you in terms of like, seeing a muscular individual, or did you see from a pretty young age or from the get-go some of the male physiques, the female physiques? Because I know for myself, I'm in my mid 30s, and when I was growing up, there wasn't the social media or anything like that. It was the magazine. So for the most part, it was, a male physique on the cover with like a bikini type female. So were some of the male bodybuilders kind of that first impression of muscle and bodybuilding, or did you see some of these ladies that you mentioned from the get-go?
I was kind of lucky, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but I started lifting pretty early. And so the gym that I went to, it was our high school gym, but they had all of the bodybuilder posters and all that muscular development stuff up on the wall. So yeah, it was mostly the men. And kind of my backstory, what I loved seeing like the muscle cars and the girls in bikini, those pictures, that's what really influenced me. But then the more I trained and I saw like potential, like I'm going to have abs someday, you know, that's what kind of pushed me to kind of explore a little bit more. And I just liked the muscular and aesthetics of that look in general.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool to have a high school weight room with bodybuilding pictures on it. I don't know how many high school weight rooms that nowadays would have that. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So you kind of already brought it up, and it's a perfect transition here, Kimberly. But I'm very curious, kind of like, at what age did you start lifting weights, and then what was the impetus or the reason behind you starting the weight training?
So I grew up playing a lot of sports, and fortunately for me, my best friend and neighbor that lived directly behind me was kind of like my teammate in everything. And her dad was our high school varsity football coach. And so he would take her to the gym and go shoot hoops and go train weights and all this other stuff. And I wanted to go too. I wanted to get better. And it was more athletically driven, performance wise at that point. So I was in like 7th grade when I started going to the gym with him in the morning before school. And then he'd drop us off back at middle school and we'd go to class, and that was it. It was an early start, I feel like, for most people, but I was kind of fortunate that they were my neighbors and my best friend growing up, that I got an early start.
For sure. And so when you started lifting weights, because you know, it's come a long way in terms of females strength training or lifting weights, but you know, back you know, when we were younger and stuff like that, they're just, it wasn't a very common thing, right? So for you being able to lift weights at such a young age, which I think is amazing and it's awesome, were you kind of like hooked or addicted to it right away, or did it take you a little bit of time to kind of warm up to the lifting weights, or was it something, again, like as soon as you had that opportunity to do that, you were like, you know what, this is going to make me better, and I love it?
Yeah, a little of both. Like I absolutely loved it. I just saw the opportunity to be better. I played soccer pretty much my whole life, and that was kind of when our women's US team was like dominating in the World Cup, and like that was kind of the dream of mine. Like, I'm gonna go play soccer in college. I'm gonna do all these things. So it was that, but then it was also, as much as they were available to me that I could go with them, it still wasn't as accessible, like training and that stuff. So by the time I did get to high school though, so a couple of years later, I was lifting every day. I had a computer class that I was supposed to be taking instead of a weight class. And I went ahead and did all the work within the first week and a half of the class, so then I could test out of it and go to weight class.
Love it. That's awesome. All right. So I'm curious, as we kind of transition here, where did you grow up, Kimberly? And then just share with myself and the listeners, kind of like, you kind of already mentioned the sports and things like that, but so where did you grow up? What did those younger years look like? Did you have any siblings? You know, what was the setting like with your parents? How did they influence you? Just kind of paint that picture for us, if you don't mind, of those younger years. And then we'll kind of transition up to high school, and then we'll move on from there.
So I'm the youngest of 4 girls. I have 3 older sisters. My 2 oldest sisters weren't really into sports much. I mean, they played a little bit of volleyball, a little bit of softball growing up, but high school, they didn't they didn't stay in athletics. My sister that's closest to me, Carrie, she played basketball and volleyball and ran track. And my parents kind of just, since I grew up in Nebraska, sorry, forgot about that part. I was in Grand Island, which isn't a huge town. It's about 40,000 when I was a kid, but still very rural. It's Nebraska, so we didn't have all the sports. And so when I was playing soccer, we were traveling all over the state to Iowa, to Colorado a bunch. And it was just, that's what I wanted to do. And so they kind of did it for me. And so when I got to high school, it was maybe a year before I got to high school that our high school team had got a soccer team. And so then I was kind of torn between track and soccer because Nebraska decided to do girls soccer in the spring, which was track season. There was really not a good spot. I loved volleyball, but so putting it in the fall would have been hard to do that too. So I tried to just do everything I possibly could, and competitively as we could in Nebraska. It's hard. In high school, I ended up running cross country in the spring or in the fall instead. And then I'd play rec soccer, and I played basketball in the winter and then soccer in the spring. I went on a lot of visits for college soccer and couldn't really find a school or a team that all meshed well. I either liked the team, didn't like the school, or liked the school and didn't like the team. And so I kind of decided at that point I was going to hang it up and just focus on school at that point. But yeah, I kind of tried to do it all, which is kind of my motto. I've always tried to do everything all the time.
For sure. And I actually live in I'm recording this conversation in Iowa, Northwest Iowa. It's a small little town. It's like less than 5,000 people. So I definitely understand kind of like that, you know, the Midwest life. Now for you, you know, I think there's two sides. Some people love growing up in the Midwest. You know, there's obviously a lot of benefits and positives. I think some people, you know, didn't really like or don't like growing up in the Midwest for whatever reasons they have. But for you, and you know, a population of 40,000 people, that's not huge, but it's not like, you know, my hometown of Cherokee where I live currently. But what was life like, even for some of the listeners that maybe have never really spent a whole lot of time in the Midwest? What was life like for you in Nebraska, growing up in the Midwest? What was kind of the mentality? What was kind of like those experiences that you really appreciate from your upbringing, Kimberly, in the Midwest?
Well, so a lot of my family still farms, raises livestock and agriculture, which that's the life I loved. I kind of got the best of both worlds. I feel like I grew up in the city, but summers were spent on the farm and at my aunt and uncle's house, my grandpa's old farm, all that stuff. The small town life was something I really enjoyed, and I'm fortunate that I had that upbringing. You will understand, like, your people in the Midwest are hardworking. They don't settle. Like, we know what hard work is and dedication and getting things done. And so those are things that I take with me all the time and everything I do. I actually moved away to Colorado after I graduated college and eventually moved back to Kansas. I'm not quite back to Nebraska yet, but I finally am kind of living that life again. Like, we have cows, we have horses, chickens. So it's every day you're taking care of these animals too, along with getting everything that I need to do for myself and prep done too. So.
Excellent. Yeah. I saw from just scrolling through your Instagram, I was like, this girl is definitely understands the farm life a little bit, you know, and I saw that you were originally from Nebraska and stuff. So that's, it's always cool, you know, just to find people that you've never met, but through the podcast, you connect with them and you find out there's a lot of similarities with some of us and especially our upbringing. So before we kind of transition into the college years, Kimberly, is there anything, as you kind of like look back on the childhood years, was there any, you know, anything that really you feel like was pivotal in kind of shaping who you are today? I know we kind of already mentioned growing up, you know, in the Midwest, in Nebraska, things like that, but was there maybe, you know, an experience, an individual, you know, something kind of in that nature that you look back and say, man, that individual, that experience, that situation, that circumstance really had an impact, whether for the good or the bad, from those childhood years?
I would say like all of my coaches that I had growing up, they saw potential in each and every one of us. I mean, my core group of friends growing up, we were all kind of fortunate that we had a good bit of athletic ability. And so we played all of the sports together. Like we were all on the same soccer team growing up, basketball, volleyball, and kind of each one of our parents ended up being our coaches at some point in time. My dad coached us in softball. My best friend's dad that lived behind us, he coached us in basketball. And then one of our other friends' parents coached us in volleyball. And so we had like this tight knit group of us. But all of those people, and even getting into high school, I don't think I ever had a bad coaching experience. Like they saw potential and they brought it out of you. I mean, some people would probably think that some of them were a little bit more aggressive than others, but they knew it and they could see that out of you, and they were good coaches that they could dig that out of you, and they didn't accept mediocrity. And I kind of just take that with me. Like, I know that I've got potential in everything that I do, and to not settle and just do my best and always give it the 100% effort that it deserves.
Excellent. And it's you know, so interesting to look back on those younger years and see how those experiences from childhood and the adults in our lives, how truly impactful all of that is in regards to who we are today. So it's always fun to kind of like look back so that we can kind of look forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Kimberly, let's talk about college a little bit. Where did you end up going to college? What did you end up studying? Just kind of like share a little bit quickly what those years look like. And then let's talk about, you mentioned already Colorado, which is kind of coincidental. I also used to live in Colorado, but so just touch on college. Where did you go? What did you study? Maybe why was the reason that you ended up studying that? And then let's talk about what life looked like post-college.
So I studied to be a radiology tech. I did x-ray school in Hastings, Nebraska. And my goal was to move to Colorado and work on the ski slopes in the wintertime, and then find something else to do seasonal in the summertime. I was a few months away from graduation and got the opportunity to apply for ultrasound school. It was just basically served to me on a silver platter, and it was something that I wanted to do. I just didn't have all the credits that I needed to get into the program. So they kind of worked with me, and I ended up taking extra credits while in ultrasound school. That was at the Medical University of Nebraska in Omaha. So once I finished school, I moved to Colorado, and I worked in ultrasound, and I moved to South Carolina at one point, back to Colorado, and then here I am in Kansas. I currently do high-risk ultrasounds for pregnancies, any babies that have problems with them while mom's pregnant, or moms have high-risk problems, high blood pressure, anything really, is who we take care of. And since I'm with Children's Mercy in Kansas City, we take care of moms whose babies need to be delivered at Children's. And we also do in utero surgeries on some of our kids. So there's spina bifida babies that will benefit from having surgery before they're born. So we assist in things like that. It's just a really awesome opportunity to work in this field. A lot of people can't do it because it's hard. It's mentally and emotionally exhausting most days. But you get those patients that you know that you're making a huge impact and moving forward with that child's life or their life in general. I'm actually applying to grad school this fall, so I've been taking classes to finish up my prerequisites for that. So I just keep going, I guess.
Yeah, you're definitely a busy girl and got a lot going on, which that's awesome, and that's just something that's really cool to see, because as I listen to different bodybuilding podcasts and follow a lot of bodybuilders and people in the fitness industry on social media, it seems like it's this thing that everybody's trying to strive for, is like to be a full-time bodybuilder, right? But not everybody necessarily wants that or needs that in their life. So I think it's cool that you have kind of the bodybuilding side of things, but then there's also that professional side of things. And I think it's really cool, Kimberly, that from what you said, it sounds like you went to school for what you're currently doing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's something else that's pretty uncommon. A lot of people go to school, get a degree, and then they never use it. So so before we dive into all things bodybuilding, in terms of like your career, doing the ultrasounds and things like that, what is kind of like the one thing that really keeps you motivated to continue in that profession, or what's that one thing that really you appreciate and enjoy about the profession that you are in, Kimberly?
I think the thing is that, like I said, a lot of people can't do the job that I do. It's a lot of people don't understand ultrasound, and that's totally normal, but it's a very, very high skill set that you need to look at these babies. You're basically doing the diagnosing for the doctor because you're the one in there scanning them. And so I really take pride in the fact that I'm in that top percent of, I guess, ultrasound techs or sonographers, whatever you want to call us, that can do this and do it well. We get patients referred to us for certain things and it's completely wrong or bogus or whatever. And so it's good to either reassure the person that, oh no, everything's fine, or go back the other way, or here's what it is and here's what the information you need to proceed forward.
Great. All right, so let's get into all things bodybuilding. So I'm interested and curious, Kimberly, to kind of hear about when you actually started competing, and then if you want to just give us kind of a little rundown of your competition history, and then from there we'll kind of break down more of the nitty gritty in terms of the training, the nutrition, and just kind of the regimen of your life in regards to bodybuilding and kind of balancing all the things. So first of all, when did you start competing? Maybe like your age, and then just talk about that competition history. When did you turn pro? Just kind of like unpack all of that for us, please.
Okay, so my very first competition was in 2013. It's almost, 9 years ago, 8 years ago. I was 26. I wish I would have started a little bit earlier in my bodybuilding career, but I honestly didn't think I didn't know what it took to compete and to do all that stuff. So I had started working with a trainer earlier that spring, and I was just like, I just want to get back in shape. Like I said, I grew up playing soccer, so I always had these massive legs and massive quads that I could never wear any normal pants. And so I really cut back on my lifting significantly, and I ran a lot. And so I just anything to get my legs smaller. And then shortly realized after that that I wanted that back. I worked really hard to try to do it myself, and at that point I was lacking the nutritional knowledge that I needed, and so I hired a trainer and learned a lot from there. But anyway, so I started prep, just not even bodybuilding prep, and 4 weeks later they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna start you on a bodybuilding prep now because you've got fantastic muscle memory, blah blah blah, whatever. Okay, so I went on stage, I think at maybe 125 pounds, very small for my 5'7" frame. And like I said, I did figure and physique. I did both. I won all the open and novice overalls. It was amazing. I was hooked at that point. Like, I mean, of course, if you're gonna win things, nobody likes losing. You're gonna love it. And just the process, the science behind it all, I was hooked. And like, I learned so much about myself, nutrition and training, and how the training was so much different than what I've been used to for the athletic performance side of things. So I probably did a lot more shows in between my very first one and trying to turn pro. There were some shows, I did almost 3 national shows a year before I turned pro, the first few years, kind of just chasing that pro card, not knowing better and not having the best guidance from my coaches at the time. Like, there were some shows I definitely should have bailed out of. I wasn't ready, not conditioned. And I kind of touched base on it earlier that that's about the time that they were phasing women's bodybuilding out of the Olympia, and a lot of the shows had dropped that category. So I was 5'7". I'm 5'7", so I was in the tall height class for women's physique at the national level, and the local level they divide you up in height class. And so these bigger bodybuilders were outsizing me at every show, and it was getting super frustrating because I have everybody telling me, like, you're perfect for women's physique, you're this, you're that. I mean, my conditioning was nailed, like everything. When I was 100% coming into a show, I have 4 girls way bigger than me on stage. And so it was defeating a lot, but I knew that I would eventually get there. And in 2015, I had done nationals in Miami, and I feel like that was like the best overall package that I had brought. I placed 4th. It was a tough class, but again, there were 3 former bodybuilders on the places at first, second, and third ahead of me. And so I was super motivated that the next summer in July, I was going to go to USA's, and that was going to be my show. They had just talked about that they were going to start judging women's physique based on the criteria that women's physique should be and not on overall size. So it was even more motivating to hear that. And 2 weeks after that show, I fell and broke my ankle, slipped on the ice. So that was absolutely heartbreaking. I ended up having to have surgery. And so I did everything I possibly could for those first. I mean, I started training legs again within 2 weeks of surgery. My doctor cleared me and I could do anything that wasn't weight bearing. So I was doing leg extensions and hamstring curls, anything to maintain the muscle that I had without getting too much atrophy. I had tore the deltoid ligament, the inside big muscle for your ankle support also. And so my squat was terrible. Like, I had a hard time recovering from that, just mobility wise. So I wasn't ready for USA's, not even close. But I ended up trying nationals again that following November. And again, that was a show I never should have done. I didn't have the conditioning. I actually did quite a bit of improvement on my upper body and back at that point, because that's all I really could train, but my conditioning wasn't there. And so I kind of just decided to take the next year off, which I probably should have done, like I said, that year with that injury. And I took the year off. I had bought a house, did a lot of things just like for my own self and personal growth that I needed to do. And I had contacted Matt Porter the year before getting into that Miami show, as he is somebody that I've always looked up to as a coach. And I told him that I wanted to work with him, and he just said, let him know when I was ready. So a few months later, I was ready to start prep with him, and I turned pro in 2018 at USA's. I had a lot of people telling me that not to keep doing these big shows, like not do USA's, not do nationals, and go to North Americans or do all these other smaller national shows. And my answer was, I'm not going to get a pro card handed to me. I want to earn it. And I don't think a lot of people understood that. They thought that, why would you want to take the harder route, and why wouldn't you do it the easy way? And that's just not how I am. That's not my mindset. And so me and Matt did it, got it done. And we started prep again the following year for my pro debut, which was supposed to be the Omaha show in 2019. And we were about 3 weeks out from that show, and that's when Matt passed away. So I had another setback that was pretty hard. Emotionally, I was a complete wreck. I thought I owed so much to Matt, and I wanted to prove to him that the time he spent with me to get me to pro was worth it. And I started working with Alan Kress, and him and Matt were pretty close. So I thought that was a good transition. And we did the Chicago Pro instead for my pro debut. Considering all the things that I went through in those 6 weeks leading up to that show, I felt we did an awesome job. And then the next show was the Tampa Pro in 2019. And so my second pro show, this show was unbelievably huge. Like, I had no idea what to expect getting there. There were 43 women's physique competitors. And I was so happy with the package that I brought in. And I kind of didn't care, if that's the correct way to say it, how I placed. I just wanted a place. There's 43 people on stage. I knew that I'm not a big name. There's a good chance I'm going to get overlooked. And I just wanted a place. So if you understand bodybuilding placings, if you're 16th and there's more than 16 people, everybody gets 16th. So I just wanted to know how I really stacked up against all 43 of these people. And I ended up getting 15th. So I was ecstatic about that. I got my placing, and I was happy and ready to move on and see what I could do the next year. Then COVID hit, and I was in prep for Omaha, because I'm from Nebraska, and Omaha is my show. And shows kept moving and rescheduling because of COVID. And working in the hospital setting, we were stressed to the max. We had no idea what was really going to go on with COVID. So I shut it down. We decided just to do what we could. And then that's when the gym shut down. So a lot of workouts at home. And I just used the year to relax as much as you could with COVID and just focus on training and what I could do. And then here we are in 2021. And my first show, I placed third at Omaha. And I honestly didn't expect as good of a placing. I didn't think that I was at 100% with my conditioning. And that's what me and Alan had talked about, that my legs still needed to be 100%, and they weren't quite there yet. So that's our focus moving forward.
Awesome. Now, I want you to just kind of touch on a little bit that pro debut that you had, which I believe you said it was the Chicago Pro. Because when you're striving for a goal or to attain something in life, and then you get it, you got that pro card, and then you kind of go to that next level of stepping on a pro stage. Just share with us, Kimberly, what that experience was like for you to be on the Chicago Pro stage for your pro debut. Like what were kind of your emotions? Was it kind of surreal? Just share a little bit about that, because most of us listening to this, a lot of us listening to this will never have that experience. So what was that pro debut experience like for you?
I can't even tell you how many emotions running through my body. My whole goal was to do what me and Matt had set out to do. I was beyond excited to even get there and be on stage, and kind of just took it all in as much as I could without letting my emotions overcome and stressing myself out. But like I said before, when I was still in that pro card running, like trying to get it, like I didn't want to take an easy, quote unquote, easy show and just get that pro card handed to me, because I didn't want to then show up on a pro stage where I am getting blown out of the water by all these other people, because in my mind, I was like, well, then I didn't really deserve it. Like, I want to earn that card and be able to step on the pro stage and be competitive. And so that I wasn't 100% at that show, but I still felt like I was competitive and I did well. And finally seeing myself in pictures and comparisons with other competitors that I've been following for a long time on stage was an amazing feeling. Michaela Haycock was in Still Women's Physique. That was the show that they had kind of told her she needed to move over to bodybuilding. And so it was kind of cool to be in the same comparison as her. She's done phenomenal things, and she's got that same hard work ethic. And yeah, it was just, it's surreal. Like it's hard to explain like how hard you work for something and to finally achieve that goal.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I kind of just wanted you to mention that or talk about that, because there's so many of us that see that from the outside, but will never get to experience that from the inside, so to speak. Now, I want to take a step back here, Kimberly, because between this podcast and my other podcasts, I've had a lot of people within the fitness industry. I've had a lot of competitors on. Actually, Alan Kress has been your current coach has been a guest on the 127 Fit podcast, my other podcast, and we're gonna get to him in a little bit. But so many people I've had on my podcast, talk about poor experiences with coaches, right, within the fitness industry, especially kind of that first or second coach. So just touch on maybe why. And, we're not here to put anybody down or tear anybody down, but maybe just why was that those initial experiences with maybe your first or second coach before you got to Matt Porter? Why was it, in your estimation, maybe not the best experience? And then what can you speak to people that are just getting into bodybuilding, people that are just kind of getting into the fitness industry? Maybe they're looking for a trainer, they're looking for a coach. From your experiences, what can you tell them to maybe look for, and how can they vet people in terms of a trainer or coach if they are looking for one, and specifically looking to compete in some sort of physique division?
There's so many coaches that don't really have the experience that they need to prep somebody, I feel like. And I think there are coaches there's very good coaches out there. There's a lot of them. So don't get me wrong with that. I feel like some coaches have their competitors that they do well with in certain categories, and then there's some that they don't. Because to be honest, a men's bodybuilder and a women's physique competitor are nowhere near the same. Training's different, nutrition's different, supplements, protocols, everything's different. And I feel like the first, and even from women's bodybuilding to physique, I had my first coach trying to treat me like a women's bodybuilder and not physique. And like I said, I was on stage in my very first show at 126. So trying to push a lot of things on me to speed up the process was not how I wanted to do things. That's not the safe way to do things. And so I wouldn't do that. I basically refused. And so then that's when the coaching got hard to deal with. Like, I didn't want to do what they wanted me to do. And so then I was getting ridiculed and called out on not doing my diet, not doing my cardio, not this, not that. And so my cortisol levels would spike, and it was just almost like an abusive relationship. So that ended pretty abruptly. And then some other coaches, again, they don't know how to deal with certain roadblocks, right? I was making great progress, and then I plateaued, and their answer is always more cardio, more drugs, more this, instead of pulling things back or whatever, just resetting things. There's just a lot of variables that happen in prep that a lot of the coaches with not enough experience don't know how to handle. So that's something that I would always tell people to look for, is people that have good experiences usually had better coaches. My boyfriend, for example, didn't have the best experiences with prep. And so he was not so happy with me wanting to do another show when I was first talking about it. And he just knows what he's experienced and not the good side of things. And luckily he had a great experience when we went to Omaha and saw how things are really supposed to be done. And he heard some of our conversations, me and Alan's conversations, and he just really appreciates how Alan is so smart and experienced and does things the way that they should be done. I always tell people when they're looking for a coach, to spend time talking to them and get as much information, talk to other competitors that have worked with them. Don't just look at who they put on stage, because that's not always the representative of their coaching either. And just kind of know, getting into it, what they're about. Are they trying to just get you on stage? Are they care about your health? Those are important things. And so that was kind of, I had listened to so many of Matt's podcasts and YouTube videos before, and the way that he talks and explains things they make sense if you listen to his stuff. And that's why I really wanted to work with him. And after a few bad experiences, I knew that that's what I needed to do. And then that I fell in Alan's lap. Unfortunately, he had to pick me up in a complete mess of a state. But if he wouldn't have known how to handle me, then I could have had a terrible experience. But I knew that he knew what to do, and he got me exactly where I needed to be in time for the Chicago Pro.
Now, I just kind of piggybacking off of this, how important is it? And you brought it up, and I think it's very important. But how important is it, Kimberly, when you are looking for a coach, when you're a competitor or looking to compete? How important is it for, if you let's say you're a male bodybuilder, how is it important for you to find somebody who really works with male bodybuilders and knows how to work with male bodybuilders, as opposed to somebody that maybe is just like just preps mostly bikini competitors, but they say they can prep you too? You know what I mean? How important is it to find a coach that knows how to prep specifically maybe males or females or a bodybuilder or a bikini or a figure? Like, how important are those nuances when you're looking for a coach?
I think they're pretty significantly important. Like I said, there are those coaches that can do it all because they know how the body works. They know the chemistry. They know the physiology of things. Those people that have all the education and training behind them, like Alan does, they can probably handle any competitor because they know all the issues. They know how to get through roadblocks. They know, I mean, he does so much testing, hormone testing, adrenal testing. Those people that keep tabs on those things are more likely to be able to handle all the different categories of competitors versus the ones that are not. So I feel like, I mean, most coaches are going to be honest with you if they want to do a bodybuilder or no, I'm doing bikini or whatever. I feel like a lot of them will. But the thing is that this sport is not cheap. And I tell people all the time, no matter what it is you get what you pay for. So you're going to spend a little bit more money on a coach that is probably more invested in you as well than somebody that you're going to find off of Instagram for a whatever 4th of July promo for 6 weeks of training. You know, like, you get what you pay for. So if it's something that you seriously want to do, invest in a coach that's going to invest in you also. And don't just sign up for a prep with a coach. Like, work with them beforehand so they can get you to where you need to be for a prep. So it goes a lot smoother.
And so let's take that right into talking about Alan a little bit, because, you know, I you know, listened to his podcast, him and his wife, from everything that I listen to and see kind of from the outside through their podcast, through their social media, just really have an awesome team that they have built, and they're just kind of taking it to that next level in terms of coaching and business. And it really seems like they do things the right way, the healthy way. And it seems like from my perspective that they really care about their athletes. They really truly care about their clients. And I think that is coaching, right? And my conversation with Alan, you know, I know he's got a lot going on. He took some time, you know, to jump on my podcast and chat with me. So I really respect just his attitude and the way that he approaches life and his business and his coaching. So for you, you know, kind of picking you up in your unfortunate situation when Matt passed away, how has Alan really been able to maybe take you personally and athletically to that next level, Kimberly?
So I've always thought I was in pretty well check with keeping my health and lab work and all that other stuff done. But then working with Alan, he's even more so, like, he gets more involved in it, more like he asked me to do the Dutch test at one point, and I kind of poo-pooed it and was like, I don't need it. And hindsight, I probably should have done it the first time he asked me to do it. And then we ended up doing it about halfway through prep and learned a lot. And so I was like, well, yeah, should have done it sooner. But I mean, he's phenomenal to work with. I trust everything he tells me to do and not do. I know I can tell him something and he's going to respond, like, and he has an answer for most things. I have weird symptoms or something. Like, we found out I have an allergy to quinoa at 3 weeks out from Omaha. And so I'm telling him, like, I had heartburn this night and I have GI symptoms the next time. And then it gets worse the next time and the next time. And it's like, it's an allergy. So, yep. And so he can make those adjustments and just has that, not only does he see the things, but he helps you kind of focus on things like, is this something that happens every time, or is it just a once happened and it's never happening again? Like, he helps you kind of be self-aware of a lot of things as well too, like diet, training, everything. Like, he's just, I can't say enough good things about him. I appreciate him so much. Just as I learn things from him every day, I swear. I go through his stories on Instagram every time I'm doing cardio, and there's always some tidbit of information that he's blasting out there for everybody. And like, that's so respectable to me. Like, he doesn't have to do that. But informing anybody that wants to watch is really cool of him to do. And there's a lot of his N1 coaching staff or members that do that stuff too. And it's like, it's not the popular opinion for a lot of the social media influencers, and so they kind of don't get the recognition that they deserve. And it's like, if you're looking at training stimuluses and stuff, that information is amazing.
Very well put. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's just what Alan and his wife and his team and really, I follow kind of the whole Revive team. You got Matt Jansen and Nick Walker, kind of that whole community that has come together down there in Florida. Like, they're just taking competing, coaching business to that next level. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I've had, conversations with Matt Jansen back and forth on Instagram through DMs, Nick Walker and some of these other people. It's like, dude, like I'm nobody, you know what I mean? The same thing with Alan. It's like somebody, with everything that he's got going on, to take the time to, first of all, respond to me on a random DM on Instagram, and then actually take the time to set up time to be on my podcast. Like that really for me, just shows me that, yes, the fitness industry gets a pretty bad rap and there's a lot of crappy coaches out there, but there's also some really amazing human beings and amazing coaches and really good people. And I just have so much respect for Alan and that whole Revive kind of crew and team down there, because they're just taking everything to the next level, and it's refreshing. So, Kimberly, I want to kind of get into some of the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts. Let's start with training. So why don't you kind of talk about maybe like what your training was, back, maybe in those earlier years, like 2013, the first year you competed, and then how has your training evolved over the years, and then kind of what did it look like maybe this last year leading up to your competition in Omaha?
So starting out, I had a lot of junk volume, is what I think Alan refers to it as. You're just doing loads and loads and loads of reps that are just basically, you get to the point where they're useless after so long. Like, my leg days, honestly, would take me 2 hours to get through, because they were programmed with 400 to 600 reps of junk. And and that's kind of like, I started researching more of like training, and just kind of hypertrophy stuff, and would do a lot of my own programming after that. I'd go through a little bit different phases of like reps and that stuff, but I still didn't quite know what I was doing. Working with other coaches, some coaches didn't give me any training and some did, and others would just tell me what to work on, like lats, or we need thickness, or that kind of stuff. And it was always a little bit kind of hard. It's like you're paying somebody for prep and you're paying a good amount of money, and it's like you're not getting as much as you feel like you should out of it. So when I started with Alan, obviously, again, I was in a pretty emotionally stressful state, and he gave me a workout to kind of like decompress that stuff. And to me, I was just like, what are we doing? Like, this is nothing. Like, I'm not training. I'm 6 weeks out. Like, what is going on? And obviously there's a method to the madness, I guess you want to say. And I learned so much in like actual training stimuluses from Alan. And I mean, we've gone through almost 25 different types of workouts, and there's a reason why you do negatives, and there's a reason why you're contracting and holding and pausing, and there's just so much to learn. I don't think I could ever learn enough. And so I mean, I went from training 7 days a week, 6 days a week, and cardio every day I think I got up to like 2.5 hours of cardio for some of my preps. And you don't know any better until somebody tells you that that's not how you do things. And I think maybe an hour or 10 minutes most on training days of cardio, and that's fasted cardio is never more than an hour. I think we've never done over 55 minutes. Maybe I'm training 2 days a week, 1 day off, so we have recovery. And that was the other thing with Alan, is he emphasizes recovery, and that's the hardest thing to learn, I think, in bodybuilding, is you don't want to take a rest day, but you need that complete recovery. And now I love it. I love recovery days. I'm so busy, and so that extra time to not have to be at the gym or doing cardio is well used on other things. But yeah, I mean, I just the training from Alan, I think so many people would benefit, how to do things properly, like actually what muscle you should be activating and how you're properly training to activate your lats or anything like that. I mean, it's phenomenal, like how detailed some of his training programs get, and they're so helpful, and you actually are achieving what you need to do.
So now, in regards to like the actual, strength training or lifting, like what is kind of like, what does that program or what is that split kind of like, leading up to this last competition, Omaha, look like? What does it kind of currently look like the actual split, and like kind of like what are some of those areas of focus within that split for you, Kimberly, in regards to body parts that you're trying to bring up or make better?
So we're kind of at a push-pull. So I have a lower body push day, I have an upper body push day, and then a rest day. And then the next day would be a lower body pull day. It's actually kind of a whole backside pull day. And then like my next day is kind of like the things that are like a little bit of tweaks, like a little bit of delts, a little bit of abs, and then a little bit of glutes. So we're kind of hitting the focuses more, I think, on those days. My critique that I got back from the Omaha Pro was leg size, which I feel like that was more my bad posing and not quite being quite as conditioned as I needed to be. And then width in my lats, obviously we can't fix that in the short amount of time that we're going to turn around and do the next show, but working on that posing and getting the conditioning down will be kind of what we need to be successful and competitive again at this next show.
And so then in terms of like kind of like rep ranges and like total sets, because I kind of see what some of the people kind of within the crew down in Florida do, kind of like the Matt Jansen type training. But is that kind of what Alan has you doing? Is it kind of like a one all out top set, and then you kind of transition to the next movement, or kind of what do the rep ranges look like, and then what is that kind of like total sets look like? Is it again like that top set, or is it a little bit more sets than that to failure? What is the details of that look like?
I think most of my training days right now, I have a couple top sets and then a drop set. And then a lot of them are like the 8 to 10 rep range, with that last set being to failure. And I think that was mostly, we did that to keep inflammation down. And I like the different styles of training. Like, we focus a lot on the negative movements, and that was a big change in my training, and I noticed so much more improvements once we started doing that.
Awesome. Now I want to touch on a few minutes here, kind of just like nutrition, and it's interesting that you kind of just mentioned, like 3 weeks out from this last show in Omaha, you found that you had a food allergy to quinoa. So how has and I'm sure it's probably pretty drastic, but how has your nutrition changed from the earlier years of competing to kind of where it is at now? And just kind of give us like a general picture of what you eat in a given day, if you don't mind.
I think my food sources are all pretty much the same through the last 9 years. A lot of lean proteins, chicken, ground turkey. I've used shrimp, I've used cod, some leaner beef, and then like all your green vegetables, your green beans, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. And my carb sources are mostly sweet potatoes, rice, oatmeal, Ezekiel bread. So the funny thing is with the quinoa, I don't like quinoa. Like, I've tried it a few times and I thought it was gross. So there's so much other better foods out there that I would rather eat. So it's not a food that I've ever really consumed, I guess. So when Alan had put it in my diet, I was so tempted to tell him that I didn't like it, but I don't complain about things. I mean, I had a coach that had me eating cod for 5 meals a day. So I just do what I'm told and I get it done. And so to make this quinoa taste better, I put some spicy seasoning on it because I love spice, and that's kind of the only thing you can use on prep. And so I thought originally that was what gave me the heartburn and whatever. And just kind of moving forward, I had thrown that out, made some new quinoa, and then still had the symptoms. And then the symptoms are progressively getting worse and hanging along longer. And so it took a few days to figure that out. But once we finally did, I was like, I knew there was a reason why I didn't like quinoa. Like, this is, I should have said something. And so it's hindsight, but that's pretty much most of my food that I eat. We get my carbs pretty low, but never completely out. That's just kind of how my body responds. My fats are fairly low, but never zero, really. So that's completely different than preps I've done before. Like I said, I had a prep with 5 meals of cod, and the other one was egg whites, no fats. I've done 0 carbs for a long time. And those get results, but I don't think that's the healthy way to do it also. So I appreciate that. Alan had told me from the very beginning he doesn't like to go to 0 carbs, and he will try not to go to 0 carbs. And I never quite understood that. at first working with him, because I'm like, that's the only way my body responds. Well, turns out that we've done enough work in the off season that we don't have to do that during prep.
Excellent. Now, in terms of kind of like what is next for you, you mentioned, your the next competition. What is kind of like the next focus for you? Are you looking to compete again this year, Kimberly? And then what is kind of like your long-term vision or your long-term, goal for this competing in this bodybuilding thing? Like, are you wanting to get to the point where you can live off of, bodybuilding, be like a quote unquote full-time bodybuilder, or is your goal or your vision something else? So what's your kind of the future in terms of your competing, and then what's kind of like your long-term vision for being a professional bodybuilder?
Well, short term is we're prepping for the Texas Pro, which is August 13th. So a little under 4 weeks out from that. When we started prep, originally the Omaha Pro was scheduled in June, and my goal was to do the St. Louis Pro in Omaha, and then I was going to be done. And I didn't foresee myself continuing competing. Like I said, I'm going to apply to grad school this fall. And so I was ready to hang up the competing for a while, and focus on like my real life. That's what I call everything but bodybuilding is my real life. Then we decided not to do the St. Louis Pro. And then, well, looking at the schedule, we realized that Omaha got pushed back to July. And I was like, I'm going to be prepping all summer long, which is what I did not want to do. But I knew that I needed to at least get on stage one more time. And like I said before, like, I want to finish what me and Matt started. Like, I need to do that Omaha Pro. Like, that was my goal. And I was really kind of disappointed in myself the 2 weeks before the show. And I didn't feel like that my conditioning is where it needed to be. And everybody's ready for me to be done with prep. And so I kind of had a conversation with my boyfriend ahead of time, just saying like, I will not be happy with myself if I don't go into this show at 100%. I'm obviously still trying to get there these last 2 weeks, but if I'm in the top 5 and I'm this close to, like, there's a possibility of getting an Olympia qualification, like, that's the dream. Like, you don't do this sport just to do it. You do it because that's your dream to get there. And so I was like, I'm probably going to do one more show. And, but it was contingent on me placing well. And there's actually a chance that I can win the next show. It's not, if I got 6th place, if I got 7th place, then I was going to be happy with just being done and just hanging it up for a while I focus on school and whatever else I need to do. And so when we got to Omaha and I was in the first call out, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Not what I expected. And then they reconfirmed me and Christelle and I can't remember the other girls for the top 3. And so then that's when you get excited and it's like, wow, I've really done what I needed to do. And here we are. So then we definitely started talking about this Texas Pro show. And there's actually excitement to compete. Like, I was dreading it. I did not want to prep anymore. Like, it's been a long prep. We've started in January, and prepping over the summer is really hard. Like, you want to go and have fun and eat all the food and ice cream. And so I I kind of had that motivation back that, you know, this could be a real thing and we could really do this. So right now, that's my only plan is Texas. That's all I'm looking at. I'm not really looking forward to other shows for this year, but I do know that I will take a good break for competing moving forward. If I do get into school, that's going to be my priority. And prep is hard when you're trying to do schoolwork. Like my only time that I can study is when I'm doing cardio. So that's what my cardio sessions look like in the morning, is studying and trying to get my assignments done before midnight the next night. And so, yeah, that's kind of where my mindset is.
So before we kind of wrap our conversation up today, Kimberly, I already mentioned this, and you just kind of brought it up with doing the homework while you're doing cardio. But I have so much respect for you. I have so much respect for these, pro competitors that, have kind of what you call like your real life. And then you have your competing life, your bodybuilding life, your training life. And the training and the eating, I'm assuming kind of coincide whether you're competing or not, but you're a pro athlete. So, and you have, like you said, a very, at times stressful job. You have a high intensity job at times, a very important job, a very important career, and then, adding in more schooling. So how do you kind of, balance, or how do you intertwine the professional athlete competing, and then, kind of like what you called like the real life, your career, your significant other, your schooling, and all the other things that you have going on? How do you intertwine those? How do you make all of those things work at a high level?
It's not easy. Not easy at all. I have to be at work at 7:30 in the morning. So I get up at 4 to get cardio done. The last few weeks, my boyfriend's taken over the feeding of the animals, so I don't have to get up and do that in the morning. But I work until about 4 o'clock. We have 8-hour days, which isn't terrible, but then I go to the gym after work. Training isn't junk volume, so I can get in and get out in a decent time, do the little bit of cardio that I need to do after training, come home. Just depending on what we have going on, I'm either trying to get my homework done or outside taking care of animals or whatever else needs to be done around the house. There's a lot. And then I have to food prep on Sundays. That's kind of my day that I do the big volume of food prep, because I don't have time during the week. There's been quite a few nights recently that I'm prepping food at 11 o'clock at night or finishing my homework right before the deadline, just because we've been busy. And but my whole entire competing, I mean, I've had jobs where I've been on call, so I'd be called into work 3 or 4 times at night, and I'd still get up and get my cardio done. I've just always said that it has to be done. Like, there's no excuse, it has to be done. So you just find a way to get it done. That was kind of me and Alan's thing, that my rest and my sleep is probably not as good as it should be. So I try to be more efficient on things during the week so I can get enough sleep since I'm up so early. Not always easy, but we kind of find a way. I lived by myself for such a long time prepping for shows before that I'm used to doing everything by myself. My boyfriend's been nice enough to help me with some things, taking over some of the responsibilities with the animals and stuff. So that's been kind of helpful this prep. I've never had that before, and appreciate that help. But it's just all a matter of wanting it. You have to want it, otherwise you don't get things done.
For sure. before we finish this out here, Kimberly, you know, I also compete, and I can kind of relate to you. I've been on prep since January, and I had a competition in August that got canceled for low numbers. So then thankfully I have another competition in September I already had scheduled. But you know, I can kind of understand, you know, in terms of the competing thing, because I'm also a competitor myself. But, you know, if you're open to it, I truly believe that, you know, bodybuilding and this entire lifestyle can really give you a lot in terms of like personal growth, right? If you're open to learning and growing as a human being, along with your strength training and your fitness, growing in that, like there's so much to be gained in terms of personal growth within bodybuilding, within competing, within fitness, within training, within nutrition, and kind of having all of that stuff dialed in. So as we close out, what's kind of like something in terms of personal growth, maybe from fitness, from competing, from bodybuilding, from all those things that you're involved in that encompass fitness? What's something or a couple things in terms of personal growth that you kind of look at and say, man, like I got this in terms of growing as a human being from fitness, from competing, from bodybuilding? Is there something in regards to personal growth that kind of sticks out when I ask you that?
It's really just, it's kind of everything, if that makes sense. Like there's the goal that you want, right? If you want something, you're going to do what you need to be to get that goal. And it's being dedicated, being prepared. It's all the things that you need to do to be successful in bodybuilding to achieve that goal are things that you use in life. Like, and I mean, I guess maybe it's just my mindset and how I was brought up too, but I feel like if you're successful in bodybuilding, it's because you do all those things, and bodybuilding teaches you that you have to do those things. It's not being perfect all the time, but it's striving for excellence and striving to be perfect, because life is going to throw curves at you and you can't always be perfect, but that should be your goal. Like there was a time where I fixated on being perfect. And I kind of had to let that go a little bit. And I also am very A-type, so I am used to being in control of a lot of things. And again, life's going to throw you curves, but if you can adapt and stay dedicated and just find the way to get things done and to achieve your goal, like that teaches you so much in life. And I know there's a lot of people that just are amazed, and my boyfriend tells me all the time, like, I don't know how you do all this stuff. Like, how do you do all this stuff? My best friend told me that the day of the Omaha show, and I about started crying, because it's like, that's just me. Like, I don't see it as like I have all this on my plate. I just say, these are the things I want, and I'm going to get it done.
Excellent. I love that. Now, we've had a very thorough conversation. We've covered a lot of topics, touched on a lot of different things, which is awesome. Is there anything, Kimberly, that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to share? Is there any final thoughts or final words that you would have for myself and the listeners?
Oh, I don't know. We talked about a lot. I don't like, I just like, with the whole point of the podcast, I guess, Behind the Muscle, is to not judge the book by the cover. That there is a lot to us all. And that's kind of when I was first started competing. As much as I didn't have the best experience with some of my first coaches, one of them told me, like, always be professional. Like, as an amateur, I was always told to act like a professional. If you want to be a professional, act like a professional. And so I took that with me through my whole competing career. It's like the way I interact on social media, the way I am in public, at the gym, in anywhere. Like I don't look at myself as anybody important. I am just me, and I've always been really humble about things, and so I don't get in over my head, and it's just do what I'm supposed to do and be professional. And again, I have a real life, so I would never want the fact that I'm a bodybuilder to impact negatively my real life either. And so I'm glad that I can talk about myself a little bit, which I don't like to do normally, but for people to know that it's not all the stuff you see on social media. There's a lot to us, and it's been nice talking about it.
For sure. And I think you're the perfect individual to be the first official guest of Behind the Muscle, Kimberly, because you do have that, you do have that professional bodybuilding side, but then you have that professional career side. So I couldn't have had or asked for a better guest for the first one on this new podcast endeavor. Now, if people do want to, follow along your bodybuilding journey, if people want to, maybe they were, impacted on something you said or something we discussed today on the podcast, if people want to find out more about you, follow along, connect with you, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you at, Kimberly?
Oh, I have Instagram. I had it. It's open for everybody to see now. So my Instagram is Kimbers17.
All right, awesome. And then is there any individuals or any sponsors or anything that you would like to shout out before we wrap it up here?
I just want to say thanks to Alan. He's the tool through all of this that gets me through where I need to be. And that's really about it.
All right, awesome. So Kimberly, thank you so much again for coming on to the podcast and sharing your story. It's greatly appreciated. Listeners, I just want to thank you so very much for tuning in to this episode of Behind the Muscle. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please subscribe to the podcast, leave a written comment, leave a review. And as you have found great value in Kimberly's story and her just kind of giving you a look behind the curtain of her life and the life of a pro bodybuilder, just take this episode and share it on your social media stories. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. Catch you guys later.